Welcome back to America's Now. Times are hard for Puerto Rico. The financial crisis has left the island drowning in $70 billion worth of debt. It's forced the local government to have bond sales to finance their fiscal troubles. Meanwhile, public union workers have taken to the streets, protesting the government's proposed austerity budget. And the unemployment rate is so high that educated Puerto Ricans are leaving the island in droves. Nitza Perez has the story.
Puerto Ricans used to be the happiest people on earth. That's according to a 2005 World Values Survey. 2 years later, in 2007, even after losing their first place spot to the Danish, Puerto Rico maintained a favorable second place spot on the list of happiest places to be. But not long after, Puerto Ricans started leaving. So much so that today, more Puerto Ricans live in the U.S. mainland than on the island itself. And what complicates the situation even more is that the majority of the new wave of migrants is young and educated. The mass exodus of recent years is the largest the island has seen since the 1950s, when almost 500,000 people left looking for better economic opportunities. Back then, a very large number of Puerto Ricans settled in New York City and in other parts of the northeastern U.S. This time, they're mostly coming to Florida.
Well, it was a very tough choice because all my family's in Puerto Rico. I grew up in Puerto Rico, but it was a point in my career where I could not do anything more that I was doing. I was working in a big firm in Puerto Rico, and it was a great experience while we had stuff to do. But when the economy hit rock bottom, the firm, as well as other firms in Puerto Rico, didn't receive any work, any referrals.
Lourdes Rodriguez left 4 years ago, and after a short stay in Washington, D.C., established her own law firm in Miami. Like her, 80,000 other Puerto Ricans have fled in the last 2 years.
The primary cause of this mass migration is economic. Over the last 10 years or so, I think it's been the rise in unemployment, poverty, and lack of economic opportunities that have led more and more Puerto Ricans to leave the island.
Jorge DUANY is an analyst and also part of the trend. He used to be the acting dean of the College of Social Sciences at the University of Puerto Rico. But about a year and a half ago, he moved to Florida to become director of the Cuban Research Institute at Florida International University.
I was born in Cuba, but raised in Puerto Rico, so I'm something of a Cuba Rican. I never thought of leaving the island until recently. I thought my place was in Puerto Rico, so after I finished my doctoral studies, I went back to Puerto Rico, and most of my professional career developed there. I found myself not being able to take care of all my debts, and the cost of living was extremely high.
The government fights to tackle an unemployment rate of 15.2%, double the U.S. national average.
We're taking some fiscal reforms, dramatic fiscal reforms.
EDUARDO BHATIA, president of the Senate of Puerto Rico, explains.
We're going through the adjustment period of a new economy on the island. We also need, and I would encourage the United States government to rethink its tax policy towards Puerto Rico. I think a little help would come in handy right now.
What locals are asking for is a redo of the 936 code, a tax incentive the Puerto Rican government used to offer to attract companies to establish their operations on the island. In 1996, the U.S. federal government canceled the program. Once companies started leaving, Puerto Rico's government was incapable of attracting investment and instead went on a spending spree, building infrastructure and hiring a workforce, even as it didn't have liquidity to cover those costs. Instead, they kept issuing municipal bonds to pay for the deficit. Now the financial crisis has left the island with a $70 billion debt, CARMELO RUIZ, opposition leader and minority whip of the Senate of Puerto Rico, is critical of how big Puerto Rico's government has become.
Government is broke, but the people are not. And the reason I say this, because you go to the restaurants, you go to the luxuries that most people take here for granted, and an economy that is very, very depressed, you got to see that the people are still spending money. So what's the problem? The problem is the government.
Puerto Rico got a chance to put their house in order and quiet the rumors of becoming America's Greece, after having a successful bond sale and passing a balanced budget. But not everybody is convinced of a positive outcome. Alexis Garcia, the owner of Pinky's, a casual eatery in San Juan, is still betting on the island, though skepticism has him considering an eventual departure.
But we're expanding because of demand for our product, but we're staying pretty much right now in touristic area. We will expand into residential areas that are desolate, that don't have a product or a product near that need us. But after that, we already have our toe on the mainland. We've already been feeling the waters in the States, in several states over the past year. It's inevitable. We are definitely going to the States eventually.
Would you consider just selling everything you have here and just totally relocating to the States?
Who's buying? Woo! I'd be on the first plane out of here.
For Emilio Figueroa, a successful entrepreneur in Puerto Rico who owns 6 restaurants, a catering company, and a clothing line, the solution for the problems of the island transcends an economic or fiscal crisis. Instead, it's about redefining what Puerto Rico is.
Being the capital of the Caribbean, I believe in the future of this island. I believe in Puerto Rico as the capital of the Caribbean. I believe in nuestro espíritu boricua. There's nowhere else to be. People save for 52 weeks out of the year to come and vacation here. Why would I go anywhere else? Why would I live anywhere else? This is the place to be.
We spoke to many Puerto Ricans that recently left, and quite a few have not lost hope of one day returning to their island. In this land of happy people, it wouldn't be surprising to see a homecoming. After all, it wouldn't be the first time Puerto Ricans left, so they could later return.
Our thanks to Nitza Perez for that report. Critics of the U.S. government are blaming Congress for the crisis. In 2006, it removed federal tax credits for companies who made profits in Puerto Rico, which caused many Puerto Rican-based companies to flee to tax havens, such as the Cayman Islands and the Netherlands.
Coming up.
The gold of the Incas in a unique exhibition.
It's priceless to them, really, because it's understanding that there was a very sophisticated culture that existed before the Spaniards came, and they were capable of very fine craftsmanship. They were highly structured societies.
America's Next.